Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another fabulous edition of Thirsty Thursday with SipScout. I'm Suzanne. I am the founder of the Crafty Cask, where we are all about celebrating and supporting craft alcohol makers like the wonderful Norden Aquavit, who we are going to be introducing you to today.
And I'm Evan. I'm your certified sommelier, certified cider professional, boozy expert.
He's just your boozy expert. That's right. He knows more about booze than anyone I've ever met. So while we're certainly here to talk about Aquavit, if there are other questions that you have along the way, that's okay too. And as we are getting started here, for those of you who are a little bit newer to our format, we usually get started with webinar format, as we all are now, where Evan and I will kind of host with Robin, and we will talk you through and kind of teach you a little bit about Aquavit and Norden specifically. And then at the end, we will open it up so everyone can turn on their cameras and chat with us directly. But in the meanwhile, please use the chat and please ask us your questions in the chat so this can be engaging, and we will make sure that Robin gets them. And on that note, Robin, hello, introduce yourself.
Hello, hello. Robin Cleveland. I'm a co-founder along with my wife Summer of Norden Aquavit. We're based in Michigan. We make not only Aquavit, but this is our flagship spirit. That's what we launched with 5 years ago. It's a traditional Nordic spirit that we love sharing with the world.
I was curious about that. What other spirits do you guys make?
So locally, we make a few liqueurs that are just for a few bars that we partner with. So we have a really lovely raspberry liqueur that we make with black raspberries, wild black raspberries here in Michigan. We distill some caraway into that too. So not too far away from the Aquavit, of course. And then we do a few custom gins, and I actually make a botanical rum.
Wow.
It's not under our name, but that's something I developed with another bartender friend of mine.
Cool. I've tried one botanical rum, blanking on the name of it at the moment. It was really interesting. That is an interesting category.
What are the botanicals that you put in that?
So this is going to be based around a Thai curry recipe.
Oh.
Actually, it's from a Thai restaurant in Detroit. And I can't go into too much detail because it hasn't been released yet. But that's the sneak peek inside info.
Very cool.
Man, how do I get a little sample of that sent us in the mail, Robin?
Hint, hint. Make it happen.
All right. So welcome, everyone. It looks like we have people joining here. We always love to hear where you're joining from if you want to throw it in the chat so we kind of get that conversation started. But as we go through this, Evan's taught us tasting techniques a few times. And so if you're new and you want some tips for tasting techniques, we can certainly do a brief, intro to that. So throw it in the chat if you would like us to do that. But the number one tip we have for you when it comes to tasting spirits is don't stick your nose all the way in the glass like you do with wine. Okay. You do still want to nose it because remember, like 80% of your taste is coming from your nose. But with wine, you really get your face in there to get it. This is high proof, so that's going to burn out your olfactory. So you really want to kind of hold it kind of down here and move it up slowly as you're trying to find those aromas. And you're definitely going to want to play with the aromas in this month's edition, particularly because these are botanical spirits and there's a lot of nuance and a lot of fun things to find in there. And Robin's going to help us discover them and find them along the way.
One component of spirit tasting that I feel like will be particularly helpful and effective when experiencing all of these beautiful spirits from Norden is the difference between retro and orthonasal olfaction. Nerd alert. Smelling something directly and then also smelling something after you've swallowed it and exhaling through your nose, you're going to smell it again. So take a sip when you get to that point. Press your tongue up into the roof of your mouth and exhale kind of forcefully through your nose. And you will smell that spirit again in a slightly different manner. And it's kind of interesting, like that, I guess, process of your brain. Smelling something gives your brain the anticipation of consuming it, and then the retro olfaction after you've consumed it, I guess, kind of affirms that you have consumed it. Like it's the gratification part of tasting and enjoying something.
And I see Robin nodding his head at that. So that must be
Yeah.
something you do as well, Robin.
Definitely, yeah. Another thing that I learned from Paul Picoult, who's a kind of a legendary reviewer of spirits, is one big thing is to, when you're smelling, smell very delicately. Of course, don't suck it all up, like you were saying, but keeping your mouth open also and allowing everything to kind of weave back and forth between sort of your mouth, your throat, and your nose all at the same time will help you pick up on things.
Yeah, kind of breathing with your mouth open as you're smelling as well.
Yeah.
Great. All right, before we jump in, I want to do a quick PSA for what you all have to look forward to next month with SipScout, for those of you who are members. Next month, we are super excited about, especially Evan, who's our Arizona hometown boy. We are doing a Discover Arizona Summer Wines Kit. So you're all going to be getting 4 different Arizona summer wines, so whites and rosés. Because a lot of people don't think of Arizona as a wine region, and they certainly don't think of it as a grape wine region, not yet. But there's been a lot of
new. We're figuring it out. Still, figuring it out fast.
And even from 10 years ago, the wines I was tasting in Arizona versus what there is here now is really amazing. And where we currently live in Arizona was just newly named one of the newest AVAs in the country. So it's actually really picking up in speed, and there's a lot of exciting stuff going on here. So we're going to help you get to know some Arizona wines and see what you think yourself. And they're fun because they're unique varietals, things you wouldn't hear of at a lot of other places. Like Peak Pool Blanc is one of them. Treminette, yes. And so you'll get to try some fun new varietals as well. And all 4 of the winemakers will be with us. So we'll have lots of fun conversations, just like we're going to have with a maker tonight. So that's what you have to look forward to. All right.
Oh, you need some in your glass.
Robin, I'm assuming we're going to start off with the original Tafel style. Is it Tafel?
Tafel, yeah. So Tafel means table. And that is the great place to start. That's our flagship. That's what we launched with back in 2018. Recipe that Summer and I developed over the course of about a year. And the goal here really is to remain classic and follow the European Union guidelines, but infuse some modernity into it, excite the palate a little bit more and make it a more versatile mixing spirit. My background is bartending, and I would be not living up to my background if I made spirits that were just, only good neat. So Aquavit traditionally is consumed neat, but we think there's a lot of room to play around with it, particularly with the supporting botanicals to give it a little more balance. So if anyone doesn't know, the rule has to be caraway or dill forward. And outside of that, you can use any other botanicals that you wish, so long as they don't overpower the caraway or the dill. So it's very similar to gin in that regard.
Yeah, and what I love about Aquavit is I always joke that this is perfect for gin lovers, because gin lovers tend to like botanical spirits already. And so this is a new style of botanical spirit for them. And it's also great for people who hate gin, because there's a lot of people who say, I hate that juniper flavor, I hate that pine tree kind of taste. And this really doesn't have any of that going on in there, even though there might be some juniper in there, but it is not, that hit you in the face juniper at all. So
yeah, that's the number one comment from people that don't like gin, and it is the juniper, and that is what defines gin. So you're going to have a really hard time finding a gin you like if you're a juniper hater. But we do have of course, we have the more citrus forward American styles of gin, and we walk that line a little bit too. We've got a lot of citrus in our recipe, and as you mentioned, there is some juniper, but it's very mild, and it kind of our goal is that all the flavors, all the supporting botanicals lead back to caraway. There's a lot of undertones in caraway that are not as commonly perceived when you're just tasting an Aquavit that's produced only with caraway, because it's so minty. It's got a really strong spearmint flavor. Actually,
are there Aquavits with only caraway? No other botanical?
Many.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Many in Scandinavia. One of the largest brands in the world is Aalborg Aquavit from Denmark, and they only flavor it with caraway. And then there's Brennevin from Iceland, which also just uses caraway.
Oh,
there's a lot of complexity in that botanical.
I've had Brennevin, and
I think I have
a Brennevin t-shirt.
How funny.
It's buried somewhere.
Nice.
So we have a question from Chris. Is that Kristen?
I was actually kind of curious. The juniper component. You know, you're mentioning that some of them are like stridently minty, spearminty.
Yeah.
And I feel like, at least with the first impression of the toffle, the juniper component is. It just feels like there's like a little bit of like mentholated element to it.
You mean the caraway? Juniper?
Is there juniper in the toffle?
There is, yes.
Slight. Yeah, and it's very
small amount. Yeah.
Nuanced and delicate. Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah, it's about 15 times more caraway than juniper.
Yeah, sure. So Kristen was asking if aquavit is always consumed room temperature, or would you ever chill it slightly?
Very good question. Depends how traditional you want to get. In Scandinavia, most people will insist that it must be served out of the freezer. Certainly nothing wrong with that. But our Tafel style, the blue label in particular, was not necessarily designed to be consumed that way. We say for that one, a light chill is nice. When you start getting colder than that and start approaching freezing temperatures, I liken it to having like a really well-made ale served too cold. If you have like a top fermented, like very fruity farmhouse style ale, you're not gonna want to bring that down to that, the 7-Eleven cooler temperature, which is 1 degree above freezing, because it's gonna mask a lot of the subtlety and the flavor. So same thing with our Tafel aquavit. When it gets too cold, it's not as enjoyable as a neat spirit.
We always joke that that's why they serve the cheap light beers ice cold, because you don't want to taste the nuance in those. You just want it to be refreshing. And so that the temperature, with wine, with anything, really matters. If it's too cold, it kind of masks the flavors. If it's too warm, it can kind of make some of the flavors feel out of balance. That temperature. And we do always recommend trying spirits neat first, the way the distiller intended. But then you can certainly play with adding a drop of water, a couple drops of water, adding an ice cube. If you add an ice cube, we tend to think you should like swirl it around and then maybe fish that ice cube out so it doesn't fully dilute. So you can kind of play around with those things with all of these as well. And especially that adding the water might help you find some of those different botanicals in there and open it up a little bit more.
Yeah, it's remarkable how much all of these will kind of blossom and bloom when you add a little bit of water. And you can honestly keep that ice cube in there for 15-20 minutes. And there's so many essential oils in our spirits, because we use so many botanicals. It's going to continue to evolve all the way through. You'll actually notice if it's cold and it's diluting, particularly the Tafel will start to get a little bit of a milky haze to it. And that's the oils themselves coming out of suspension right in front of your eyes. You can really see how much we put in there.
You don't do a full chill filtration for that?
We don't chill filter anything.
Got it.
And all of our SipScout members who are here, that should be ringing some bells for you, because we often talk about how, mass-made products are made to be super clear, and there are some craft products that are a little cloudy, or like things fall out of solution a little bit, and that can scare consumers away sometimes, thinking there's something wrong with it. But we always tell people, if you see a little bit of like cloudiness in there, lean in, go try that, because that means there's more of those esters and oils in there.
I always joke the first time that I saw or was poured a glass of Hefeweizen, and I was like, what's wrong with that beer? A great Hefeweizen, or a great wheat beer like maybe Oberon from killer product. Like you see that and you're like, if you're new to drinking beer or anything, it's a little off-putting, but there's a reason why they don't make it translucent and
flavor is part of it.
Clear.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a quick step back, Robin.
Yeah.
What is aquavit? Like, explain it to us as a category and the history a little bit.
Yeah, so it is originally from Nordic countries. The first written surviving reference that we can all look to is from 1531. Wow. So this is going back to the very early days of distillation in Northern Europe. The name itself comes from the Latin aquavitae, which many spirits derive the name from. Eau de vie in French is water of life. Aquavit, aquavite, water of life, same thing. Even whiskey derives the same from the Gaelic terminology for water of life. So these are going back to in history as spirits were thought of as sort of cure-alls and very medicinal, mystical creations. So aquavit's no different. Then just over the centuries, it evolved to a cleaner, more of a beverage staple in the Scandinavian culture, and particularly served with food. So you think of it as a digestif and an aperitif,
Okay.
not only before and after, but during. Very, very big during the meal, particularly in Sweden and Denmark.
So is it kind of drank like water over there in the Nordic countries? Like, is it really like
It depends who you're hanging out with, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have a traditional Danish lunch, you're usually drinking a beer and aquavit throughout the meal. And we say you sip the beer and then the aquavit. It's instead of using the beer as the chaser, the beer is the palate cleanser, and the aquavit actually is to more pair with the food. And when you have these little glasses, they serve it in these little like kind of thimble-sized glasses, and once it's gone, they keep bringing the bottle back and filling it up. And they have this wonderful art to pouring. You extend your arm all the way out and pour to the very tippy top of the glass without spilling a drop. It's like only the most seasoned professionals can do it. But
wow, cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, love a good Danish lunch. If anyone ever gets to Denmark,
Robin, what would be like some like primary cuisines that you would see in a Danish lunch, foods that would commonly be served while you're enjoying aquavit?
Open-faced sandwiches are really big. They're called smørrebrød. It's usually like a thin sliced rye bread, or really any kind of bread, but they love their rye breads there. Anything from shrimp to salmon, lots of seafoods, potato salads, kind of things like that, kind of built on top of these beautiful little sandwiches. Fried fish, caviar layered on top. I mean, there's some really extravagant stuff out there.
Cool.
Sounds like lunch at our house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Going back to like sort of the history of the category. Just want to kind of cover a little bit about the definitions. I think it's really important because we have very loose definitions in the United States, whereas they're much more strict about it in Scandinavia and Europe at large. And we happen to follow the European Union guideline, even though we don't technically have to here in the United States. So I'll give you guys the quick rundown. It's got to be a caraway or dill flavor forward spirit, which I mentioned before. But it's really important that flavor has to come through distillation. You can't legally call something an aquavit and sell it on the market in Europe if it's an infused spirit. So you wouldn't be able to just put caraway into a neutral spirit and extract flavor that way. It has to be through distillation. You're not allowed to add more than 15 grams of sugar per liter to the finished spirit prior to bottling. That's another really big one to separate it from the liqueur category. So aquavit should be a dry spirit, much like gin. Alcohol content cannot go below 37.5%. So it's a higher proof spirit. We're also not allowed to add anything overly bitter to the finished product. And that is to separate it from the very vast and amazing bitters category throughout Europe. Seemingly every region sort of has their own kind of folk bitters, as it were, like everyone's grandma makes them. And, you know, every region in Italy, particularly, you go and they've got their town brand.
Mm-hmm.
That's big in Scandinavia too. So they want
to talk about like bitter aperitifs,
like Amaro.
Yeah, aperitif, digestif, all the Amaro bitter liqueurs.
Cool. We need to go to Scandinavia. It sounds like we love bitters.
Scandinavia's got a really big kind of schnapps, what they call it, snaps culture, infusing all kinds of flavors into spirits. So, yeah, we follow the rules, even though we don't have to, and it still leaves plenty of room for creativity. There's just like gin has its rules, and there's so many different gins on the market to satisfy just about any appetite.
Yeah. So as we're talking about this Tafel style, tell us about the search for citrus
Yeah.
Citrus.
Oh boy, yeah. So our taffel style. So taffel means table. This is inspired by the styles of aquavits that you would find in northern Germany and Denmark. Despite the fact that my wife's half Swedish, my first taste of aquavit happened in Copenhagen in 2003. So my good friend growing up was Danish, and he introduced me to the category. When we were developing the recipe, we knew we wanted to incorporate some citrus, which is not very common in Scandinavia, mainly because citrus doesn't really grow there. Similarly, we're in Michigan, we don't have citrus growing here either. So we had to figure out something that worked that we could get relatively easily, and we tried so hard trying like all these different citrus varieties that grew in the United States that we could, have a steady supply year after year. And we were about to give up. And this was around Christmas time, or a few months after Christmas. I had realized that we gave our kids clementines in their stockings for Christmas. And I had taken the peels after everybody ate them, and I laid them out on the windowsill, and I dried them, and the intent was to make bitters with them. Forgot about them, tucked them away in the bar. They were in a little Ziploc bag, and kind of discovered them when I was cleaning the bar out, and I put them in a rotovap. And if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's a mini still, basically. So we did a 1 liter distillation with these clementine peels, and it was like the light bulb moment. It's perfect. The only downside is there is no supply of dried clementine peels, so we still to this day buy whole fruit, hand peel, and air dry all of those peels. 750 pounds last year.
Dedication.
750 pounds of hand peeled, air dried clementines. Your family is
getting your vitamin C.
Yeah, and very, very mushy hands. And it takes 3 to 4 people 2 to 3 days to do that. That's
sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I really do on the nose, like, and I knew clementine was in there, but on the nose, you do get that like clementine smell a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it lends a nice sweetness to the spirit without needing to add any sugar, which was really important to us as well.
I just really love how aquavit finishes like savory. Like that, just like caraway, that little savory like note on the finish is so unique from most spirits. And I'm a savory girl for sure.
You
do almost get a little salinity on the finish,
and I feel like that's very apropos for Scandinavian kind of culture, cuisine, food, drink. I mean, having salted black licorice candy. Something that's I feel popular like kind of definitive for many of those countries.
My mother-in-law's favorite candy.
It's bonkers to me because like licorice by itself is already kind of like divisive for at least the American culture.
Then add some salt to it,
and then salt it and call it a candy. You're like, wait, what? I don't want to eat that. But it's compelling, and it's actually really very good sometimes. It took a little bit of a learning curve for me to.
It's an acquired taste, but I've become a fan.
Yeah. Robin, anything else you want to tell us about the taffel style?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about distillation. We do distill a little bit differently than Scandinavian producers do. We actually took a gin making approach, so to the end of making it more of a gin-like spirit and make it a little more cocktail friendly. We wanted to produce it similar to how gin is made. So what we're doing is we're distilling all these botanicals together and just adding water back to the spirit after it's distilled. So it's in gin making terminology that's called one shot, and that means you're not adding neutral spirit back to it before diluting it. A lot of people will concentrate when they're making gin, they'll concentrate their botanicals. So they'll add 2, 3, 4, sometimes 10 times the botanicals, and then add neutral spirit and water back to it. Hendrix is a good example. They do a multiple kind of concentrated bits of botanicals, and then do a single distillation, but then use that sort of as a concentrate. And that's how most aquavits are made in Scandinavia as well, but they'll typically do each botanical on its own. So if you were making a aquavit with 3 botanicals, you would do 3 separate distillations, highly concentrated, and then blend those back into your neutral spirit or your vodka base. So in essence, it's almost like a flavored vodka rather than a fully distilled integrated spirit. What we found through lots of testing that we liked the way it came across when it was all kind of mingled together and distilled together.
Sure.
When you rectify, you probably lose a little bit of what you imbued in the spirit on the first pass when you go through it again. So it kind of makes sense that you would want to get it all in one shot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we start with a high proof, very clean, organic, neutral spirit made from corn. Then we're soaking our botanicals in that spirit along with water. So we're getting some extraction from the water, some extraction from the ethanol. And then when they're distilled together, some of the water comes over on a molecular level. In the still that we're using, which is a pot still, we're getting more water than you would in a column still. But the final batch strength is usually around 155 proof. So just a little over 75% alcohol. And then we just add water back to it to bring it to 90 proof to bottle it.
Cool. With a pot still, how do you infuse the flavor profile? Is it like, for me, visually, like from recollection, column still, it makes very much sense. You just have baskets and they drop the flavors in at various levels of temperature and infusion.
Yeah.
Pot still, how does that work with botanicals?
So pot still, you can do like a gin basket is sort of the kind of accepted nomenclature for that. And that's allowing the vapor, when the spirit is in vapor phase, the vapor will pass through that basket. You can do that with a pot still also. Okay. But we do everything in the still together. So it's all moving around. There's an agitator in the bottom of the pot, and everything's kind of moving around and cooking at the same time. And the way we control what we keep and what we discard is we're making cuts. We really only need to make 2 cuts. There's a heads cut and a tails cut, just like when you're distilling from a raw material, be it grain, grapes, or molasses to make rum. You're usually making those cuts not only for flavor but for safety. We don't have to worry about the safety aspect because the spirit is already gone through a column distillation. So we have a very clean spirit to begin with. We're just focusing on flavor at that point. So for us, we're using a lot of citrus. The caraway itself has a lot of essential oils as well. So we need to be really careful in the beginning to make a heads cut to eliminate a lot of those heavier oils, or we would have a cloudy spirit in the bottle. And it's usually about, it's about 1% really of the run that gets discarded in the beginning. Yeah.
It's really not much, I guess. Considering it's already gone through the column distillation, that makes sense.
We lose a little more on the tails cut because we can't go too deep into the tails.
Cracking into the next one.
Oh yeah.
Let's move into actually wait.
Is that the next one?
Let me defer to you, Robin. Which one do you think we should taste next?
I think that's a good one to taste next, honestly. Yeah. Okay. I wouldn't want to taste that one after the barrel age, because the barrel age does have a little kick to it.
Yep.
107 proof. So yeah, we're going down from 90 proof down to 76 now.
Okay.
This is our strawberry rhubarb. It's called limited snaps edition. Going back to the Scandinavian snaps term. There's in Sweden they call it krydda snaps, and that means spice schnapps basically. And folks would take any kind of seasonal produce or flavors that they want to preserve into the fall and winter and put it in spirit so you can taste those summer flavors. So this is all Michigan strawberries, all Michigan rhubarb. We make it 1 day a year.
Wow.
Yeah. As many strawberries as we can get from, there's 2 different farms that we work with. We kind of keep in touch with them. There's a 2 to 3 week window typically of strawberry harvest in Michigan, and we have to kind of decide whose farm we're going to go with. Whoever has the most strawberries hanging off the vines, we're going to go visit that farm, pick as much as we can, bring those back to the distillery, get them in spirit immediately. So to put this into perspective, these are not the kind of strawberries you would find at a store. They're smaller, they're juicier, and they're the kind of strawberries that are so ripe when you pick them that if you don't eat them or do something with them that day, they're going to turn to mush. They're so sweet and so juicy, but they don't have a lot of body to them. So we get them in the spirit immediately. We soak them for 45 days along with Michigan grown rhubarb. And then we have a secondary tank that gets a little hibiscus for 3 weeks. And finally, we finish it with rose water that we make from damask rose petals on our pot still, and blend that in we blend those two together. And this one is slightly sweetened. It's the only thing we make aquavit wise that has any sugar in it. So there's 14 grams per liter. It's still under that legal threshold. And it's kind of just enough to bring the strawberry flavor up front without being too medicinal.
And it's like just appropriately delivering the strawberry.
Yeah, that sweetness.
Because you kind of, you expect that when you smell and taste strawberry to have a little bit of sweetness that backs it up.
Sure. A lot of people see this and they expect it to be a liqueur also, and we wouldn't be an aquavit if we had too much sugar. So we gotta live up to the expectation of it being an aquavit, but still trying to play around with it enough to make it kind of interesting.
It's so beautifully balanced though, with all those different elements going on, and it just it's very harmonious, and it's a really nice, it does taste like summer. It tastes like
the idea. It's midsummer really in a bottle. Strawberry season is late June, right at the peak of first the longest day of the year. It's really awesome time of year in Michigan. Just
for all our guests, just a point of reference. Robin mentioned that 14 grams of sugar per liter. To compare, a can of Coca-Cola, which is 12 ounces, 355 milliliters, has 36 grams of sugar in it. Do the math there. This is very, very slight. It's barely past the perception level of most people's palates.
It works out to be about somewhere in the ballpark of a tablespoon per bottle. It's very little.
Yeah. How do you typically drink this? Is this a straight sipper? Do you do cocktails? What types of cocktails do you do? Food pairings?
Yeah, so this one was actually designed to mix with tonic. It was intended to be sort of the gateway aquavit. We launched it right at the height of the pandemic when all the bars shut down, which is really who we interface with the most as a brand founded partly by a bartender, and then also just that's the crowd that typically has understood the category, especially in the earlier days. So we all of our friends had to close their businesses, but the liquor stores were still open. So we thought, how can we make something that people don't need to fuss with? They don't really need to understand it as much, but we're still presenting aquavit to them and introducing them to a category that they might not be familiar with. So we came up with this. It's still legally an aquavit in Scandinavia, but it's almost a cocktail in a bottle. So we drink it neat. I do like this one frozen out of the freezer just fine. You do lose some of the spice notes, but the strawberry also intensifies when it's frozen, which is really neat. Since we launched it, bartenders have adopted it, and since the bars opened back up, people love playing around with it. It makes a lovely Negroni. You can French 75 all day with this. I mean,
fresh that.
I think that's the one that really gets people's eyes to light up, is particularly if you use a brut rosé instead of just a regular dry champagne. Use a brut rosé instead, and it's just magical.
Give it some extra kind of floral.
Yeah, a little more floral, a little more berry. It's very, very good.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I do feel like that sweetness that's slight and subtle, complemented with a bitter component like you were describing with the Negroni. I'm very excited to try that.
It's probably going to be a cocktail that's made tonight.
All right. Yeah, I like to use
much
Poke Rosa for that too. If you have that on hand, Poke Rosa for the same reason you mentioned about the kind of the extra floral note. There's also a little like I get a little chocolatey undertone in Poke Rosa, so I use that instead of vermouth. But or you can do a split 50-50 Poke Rosa and a nice like rose vermouth.
You know, I'm not sure where this came from, but there's a brain fart that's going on here that the flavor of this with the flavor of chai
Oh,
Yeah,
could be really cool.
I could see that working. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Michael put in the chat that a bit of water really brings out the strawberry. So everyone, if you have some water, do a little drop of water in there. We just tried it ourselves and he's absolutely right.
Yes, please.
And like we said, good idea to do with all of these because you might get a little bit more clementine from the first one, or you might get,
Sure.
and it's fun to kind of play around in that way.
But for anyone that wants to go do just a strawberry rhubarb aquavit with tonic, Fever Tree is our favorite, and Q also works really nicely. Just stay away from the really sugary ones. Fever Tree and Q both have lower amounts of sugar. You don't need that sugar. The aquavit's so flavorful, and the amount of sugar in those two tonics in particular are just enough to bring out even more of that strawberry flavor. And I like to garnish with a slice of grapefruit also, which is really
good. Have you? We love Fever Tree and Q. Have you played around much with tonic syrups?
Not since we've started the distilling business, but as a bartender, we used to make quite a few. Yeah.
There are some amazing craft
There's
tonics.
some good ones out there.
Because the sugar level, like you very much are in control of and know.
Yeah.
Totally.
And Fever Tree and Q are great.
Wonderful.
But it's really nice to be able to there is certainly no more than a tablespoon of sugar in this because I'm putting just a tablespoon of this in this other water.
Well, and it's nice for those of you at home, because then you don't have to keep cans or bottles of tonic water on hand either. You just have this little thing, and as long as you have soda water, you're good to go. So
yeah, if you've got the soda stream, that's a game changer.
Exactly. Also, if you have the soda stream, you can carbonate your Negroni, and that is also a game changer.
Major game changer. Love that.
It's the best. The carbonation goes away real quick.
Yeah, but
you got to consume it. But hey, whatever. You're making yourself a drink. Drink it.
Yeah, this is really delightful. I love this.
Yeah,
this seasonal kind of. Are you guys thinking about doing any other seasonal ones down the road, or is
we don't have anything in the pipeline right now? This one has been pretty popular for us, so we're going to continue to make it every year. We also have a charity that it's tied to called the Pink Fund, which is a breast cancer nonprofit. It's a grant program for folks in active treatment, and it helps them with cost of living expenses. So we donate $25 for every case we sell every year. For that.
Wow,
wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful.
But we've played around with stuff, at the distillery level, and we've got ideas, but until we have our own space, I don't think we're going to launch anything nationally.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're contract distilling, is that right? You're using kind of someone else's.
Yeah, we have a really cool arrangement with a local distillery where I have the keys to the building. I come and go as I please. And I handle all the production side of the business, and then they have staff that takes care of our bottling. I'll oversee that, of course, and make sure it's quality standards are being met. But once I've done the distilling and the blending, it's usually kind of hands off for me, and then I go out into the market and focus on trying to introduce this to people. So we have a really good partnership there.
Yeah, and for our guests, contract distilling can be a very common kind of way to get started in the distilling world because, as you can imagine, a distillery is very expensive, and so if you're first getting started, using someone else's equipment is a great way to go. But there are kind of two levels of contract distilling. There are some people who contract distill and they literally hire the distiller from another place and say, this is what I want it to taste like. Can you make that happen? Yeah. And then we deliver the product to them. And that's really someone else making your product. Whereas what Robin is doing is really just using their equipment, but he is still the artist in control of kind of what's happening there. So it's a spectrum for sure.
Absolutely. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It just depends on your business model, I think.
Yeah.
If you find the right partner, they can make your recipe. If you developed a recipe and you hand it over to somebody and you trust them, and you can focus more on the rest, the vast other parts.
Is there more to do other than just making the
I
product?
wish.
Yeah.
I wish.
What everyone thinks when they first get into it, right? It'll be so
Yeah.
fun to make the
Gonna
product.
be
And then-
tinkering in my lab and
Yeah.
this romantic kind of
yeah.
thing, and then you're like, oh, you're on the road for 4 weeks straight, and you're just ready to have a nervous breakdown.
Real talk,
Is
people.
your
Real
product
talk.
available outside of Michigan? Do you have any distribution?
Yes, yeah, we distribute in 17 states.
Wow, wonderful.
Biggest ones are California, New York, New Jersey,
Sure.
Illinois. We are also in Washington State and Oregon. Oregon's special order for us, so it's a little trickier. But if anyone out there is in Oregon, you just go to your store and your favorite store and have the Liquor Control Commission punch in an order for you, and we can have it down. Our supply chain, we have a warehouse in Washington State, so it's down every week. We go down to Oregon, so
Wow.
it's never long if it's not on the shelf already.
And for those of you not in those states, or if you don't want to go shopping, I put there's also a link in the chat to, you can buy bottles on Norden's website as well. And
With a
Robin has
sweet
been,
discount.
Robin's been kind enough to give all of you a nice little discount for 15% off any of these bottles. So there's that for you as well.
Yeah, we ship to just about every state. I think we can ship to 44 states through our fulfillment partner. Some of the really strict ones don't allow it. Michigan's actually one of them, oddly enough.
Planet Utah, probably.
Yeah.
I think we might be able to sell to Utah. I can't remember now.
Wow.
I don't think Alaska. Mississippi's really strict too. When maybe Wyoming's another one that's blacked out for us, but can't remember all of them. But we have some fun stuff on the website too that we're not tasting tonight. We have some single barrel offerings called the Curiosa Collection. So if anybody likes this next one, the barrel aged one, highly recommend some of these single barrels.
Yeah. Speaking of, let's talk to us about this barrel aged aquavit.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is our, we released the barrel aged and the strawberry rhubarb at the same time, but the barrel aged had in the works for a little bit longer because it's aged in once used rye whiskey casks for a minimum of 1 year. So we take the exact same spirit as the Tafel, the blue label. We reduce it down to 110 proof. So the Tafel gets bottled at 90 proof. But before it gets proofed down to 90, we stop at 110 for a little while and let it rest. And some of that 110 proof gets put into a once used rye whiskey barrel, and it's aged for 1 year and bottled at 107 proof. So this is almost like a cask strength aquavit, which is very unique for the category. Also, the fact that we're aging in rye casks is quite unique for the category. There are lots of aged aquavits in Scandinavia, particularly in Norway. It's actually the law in Norway that it has to be aged for a year in order to carry the Norwegian aquavit on the label. You can make a clear one there, you just can't call it Norwegian aquavit. So it has to be aged for a year. They typically age in sherry casks over there. Some small distillers are starting to experiment with other types of once used barrels, but rye is sort of our heritage whiskey here, even though bourbon reigns supreme these days. Apple cider and apple brandies and rye whiskeys were kind of the big players in the booze game in the early days of America. So we wanted to pay homage to that and be able to do something like totally unique. And it just so happens that the caraway and the rye go really nicely together.
Who would think?
Think rye bread with caraway seeds. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, it does have a nice spice to it from that rye. It's really, it's beautiful. Like I feel like this is how you get whiskey drinkers into the aquavit category.
It is, and the Curiosa stuff even more so, because that's all aged for 2 years plus.
Yeah.
I should have sent you guys a bottle. I'm kicking myself for not.
I feel like this with like a half portion of Montenegro.
You're talking about
Walnut bitters. Oh man, that's my new
Yeah.
Manhattan version.
Montenegro and Maletti are like two of my favorite things. That real floral Amaro flavor. Yes, indeed.
So you said this is barreled at 110 and bottled at 107.
Yes.
Is that just based on what happens during the year or less that it's in barrel?
Sometimes we have to add a little bit of water to balance it out. But typically we're usually seeing around like 108-ish when it comes out of barrel after a year. 107 was a proof that we landed on because it's also a nod to old school whiskey makers in the United States. Because prior to Prohibition, it was more about quality over quantity, and they entered into barrel at lower proofs than they do today. A lot of makers now, we're starting to see it come back to more of the old world. But when I started bartending, most bourbons and ryes were getting put into the barrel at the max at like 120 proof. When you enter at a lower proof, you get actually more flavor extracted, but of course you don't have as much alcohol to bottle at the end. But I look at it this way: if you're not bottling at cask strength, you should add the water beforehand, because you're getting a different level of extraction than just adding flavorless, colorless water at the end. Why not allow that water to extract some of the sugars that are in the wood and in our case, some of the residual whiskey.
Robin, just a point of clarification there. If memory serves, what you just said, you extract more flavor when you're barreling at lower proof?
Yeah, typically.
Interesting. I would expect that like
so there's water and ethanol work. They're solvents in different ways. They're both solvents.
Right.
There are certain flavors that water can take out that ethanol can't, and vice versa.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
It's just it's a more like round spectrum of flavors, I guess. Not necessarily that you might be able to actually extract more with ethanol, but you're not extracting the full.
You might get more, but you might not get as broad.
You might not get everything exactly.
Got it. That makes sense.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's
we're seeing a lot of the smaller whiskey producers going back to that like 110 and even 105 entry proof, which is making some better craft whiskeys now that folks are actually aging in full size barrels for 4 years plus, versus the early days when everyone was just trying to age fast and putting it in those little dinky barrels, which sometimes works, but most of the time doesn't.
Yeah. And what types of foods would you have with this barrel aged?
I really like roast pork with this, traditional Danish roast pork. Any kind of roasted vegetables would be really nice. Smoked and cured meats, like more intense flavors, fattier foods that this could cut through. Yeah, I love that. Like extra aged cheeses would be really good with this as well.
Perfect.
Yeah,
lovely.
I'll do this with aged Gouda.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, all day.
On little crystal crunches.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And cocktail wise, the flavor's so concentrated, like a little can really go a long way. And it's one of the few things that we make, maybe the only thing that we make that I actually would recommend split basing with. You can do like half and half with brandy and the barrel aged aquavit in a Sazerac, which is a really great cocktail idea. Doing a whiskey sour, like the Morgenthaler whiskey sour, if anybody's made that one, which is made with a little cask strength bourbon, and a good amaretto. We use this in place of the bourbon, and it just really sings in that cocktail. So it's a really fun one. So
I mean, I feel like
kind of thing.
This could be like used in place of a wash, any kind of cocktail that you might use a wash of absinthe or scotch, like a Black Manhattan or something like that.
Yeah.
Having that kind of delicate warmth that this has.
Yeah.
I'm excited to play with it.
Even just ginger ale or a celery soda as a highball.
Celery soda.
We do. Celery.
Yeah, celery. We call it the deli highball.
It's the best.
Oh, the deli highball.
Get that caraway.
That'd be great. We'll have to try that.
It's
100%.
solid, and it brings out the vanilla in the spirit as well from the barrel. It's really nice.
I'm so
If you want to
happy
go real crazy, I do a clarified milk punch with coconut milk and yuzu and jasmine green tea with this when I'm
Oh
feeling
man,
when I'm
Kristen,
feeling like making a cocktail for a week.
Yeah, we know one of our SipScout members on here, Kristen, her and her partner really love clarified rum punches and things of that nature. So yeah, take some notes, Kristen, take some
Yeah,
notes.
I just saw in the chat.
The recording will be up soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are gonna be fun to play with for sure.
100%.
All right, so we're moving on to the dill, but for those of you at home, you have 2 mini bottles of dill. And so you can either choose to taste through one of them and drink one and then make one cocktail, or you can take just little tasting sips and make 2 cocktails with it next. Oh, Michael Griffith is having some Guinness stew and it works great with that. I bet it would go great with a Guinness stew.
I'm sad that we're done with our Reuben casserole.
Yeah, it would be delicious with this. Yeah.
Okay. The dill.
Yeah, tell us about the dill.
Yeah, so we're now in a new family of botanicals. The first 3 were all the same 10 botanicals, same distillation technique, all caraway forward with some dill seed as a supporting botanical. This heirloom garden dill has no caraway in it. It's the distillation is a little bit different, and we're using dill 2 ways. It's called heirloom garden dill because we actually brought over an old world dill variety from Scandinavia. We've been growing it here in Michigan for 3 years now. First year, we planted as many seeds as we could. We harvested as many of those seeds to save for the next year of growing. Second year, we harvested once and then and distilled that batch. Then we planted again and harvested the seeds for the next year. And so so last year was year 3. We did 2 rounds of harvest and 1 round of full harvest and then 1 round of seed harvest. So when we harvested the still, we're waiting till the dill flowers. And this is a mammoth variety. It grows 4 to 6 feet tall.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's almost like wild dill. And there's a picture, I think, on our Instagram, if you scroll back to last year or the year before, of what it looks like in the field. And it's just like this bright yellow field of dill flowers. We hack it all down right at the base, bring it to the distillery and do a vapor distillation through our column. So we actually pack the whole column full of this huge bundle of dill. That creates, in essence, an extract of that fresh dill. We set that aside and we do a secondary supporting distillation of dill seed and coriander seed. Both of those are from California. Those are the same seeds that we use in our taffel style. So we're getting those from the same farm, but everything else is from Michigan. It's grown in Michigan. So we're using full Angelica, so from root to tip, whereas the original taffel and the other 2 just use the Angelica root. The garden dill uses the whole plants for the Angelica. We're using yarrow flower as well, which is a native Michigan botanical. It's kind of a piquant, sort of peppery floral note, and also a nice little herbal undertone as well. Then we're using nasturtium. It's an edible flower. It gives it almost like a kind of a watercress, horseradish, mild undertone. Lovage is a really cool one. That's in the celery family. It gives it a little savory note. And we're using everything above ground, not the root for the lovage. Calendula is a type of marigold that we're using. That is giving it another kind of peppery note, which highlights the freshness of the dill. And then lastly, we're using fennel, but not fennel seed. That's really important. So in Sweden, one of the rules I forgot to mention, to call it a Swedish aquavit, you have to use fennel in addition to the caraway.
Oh.
So this is sort of our nod to the Swedish style. Because our first one is so sort of Danish influenced, we had to do one for the Swedes in the family. So this is our nod to the more Swedish style, even though it doesn't have caraway in it. We're using that fennel plant. It gives it a nice little sweetness, kind of vegetal note. And we bottled this one at a lower proof also. That's another nod to the Swedish heritage. They typically bottle their aquavits at 38 or 39%. So this one's coming in at 39. That also helps as a frozen shot. So we did want this one to be recommended as frozen. It's lovely out of the freezer. Dill really is the highlight. The other botanicals are more fading into the background, whereas with the Tahoe style, it's really about this big, huge burst and lots of everything. This one is about restraint, lots of dill, but less of everything else.
Yeah, I could hang out with my nose in this glass all day. Like it just, I love that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And the dill, like, because on the nose, you expect maybe it's gonna like really taste like dill, but it's like it is like a light but consistent dill kind of flavor through there. And it's really
And I feel
nuanced.
like the fennel complements the dill very nicely. Like I don't feel like I know nasturtium or calendula well enough to like extract those, but
yeah, nasturtium is really subtle in the finish. You almost get like, if you think of like really mild horseradish or watercress, that's the kind of, it's almost like a juiciness
pepper
with a little pepper note.
Yeah, this is
this one's great with seafood. If you think like oysters, caviar, salmon, you can cure salmon with this. Great in a Bloody Mary. Great with carrot.
Yeah.
Great with carrot. That seems like seems like you teed it up, Robin.
Perfectly.
Thank you.
Perfectly. Who's ready to make a cocktail?
All right.
All right, guys. So we're gonna make our cocktail now. So we wanted to feature this cocktail, because it has aquavit in it and it's delicious, and that's how we've always made it.
Because it's delicious.
I guess that's the first one. But also because Easter is right around the corner. And honestly, this is like the best Easter brunch cocktail. It has carrots in it, so a little nod to the Easter bunny. But it really like that dill flavor, that fresh garden flavor. And I don't know about all of you, but sometimes like Bloody Marys are just a little too acidic for me. Like I can have like a half a Bloody Mary and then I'm a little bit like, all right, that's kind of enough, especially if I haven't eaten yet. Whereas this is really nice with the carrot juice instead of the tomato juice. It really like that issue just kind of goes away. So
you're in control of the acidity.
Yeah, you're more in control of it.
You add the lemon juice to your preference.
So Evan's rimming his glass right now. So what you want to do is take a little bit of, you want to cut your lemon in half, take your lemon and just kind of rub it around the edge of the glass there. And then just dip it in that rimming salt that we sent you. And that rimming salt is kind of a combination of cayenne pepper, a little bit of chipotle pepper. It has some paprika, some salt, and some dill. I think we did put some dill in there. Yeah, as well.
Keeping with the theme.
Yeah.
And then we're going to squeeze that lemon that we just cut, and we're going to add half an ounce.
Show them your cool lemon squeezer.
Yo, check this thing out. It's
awesome.
It catches the juice in the bottom and it has a little pour spout on it. And you can get so much more juice out of a lemon than, it's amazing. We just got it for Christmas.
Yeah, trying to use those things and then aiming
you miss half the juice.
Word into your jigger or measuring cup. It's a disaster every time.
Yeah. We had never even seen one of these before, and our aunts got it for us for the holidays. And at first we were like, oh, we have a juicer. What's this weird old school looking thing? Because it looks kind of old. And then now we're obsessed with it. We're like, this is so
I've been getting that targeted Instagram ad for that juicer for about a year now.
I had never seen it.
And then we're going to do a half an ounce of Mike's Hot Honey. I believe you have packets. I believe that each of those packets is a half an ounce. Is that correct?
I think it's actually an ounce per packet.
Just double check that, please. When you're making something with honey, it can be problematic. Oftentimes when you use honey in cocktail making, you make a syrup. So what we're going to do is, what I'm going to do, and what I would suggest that you do, is after you add these ingredients, before you add the ice, and I think that's indicated on the recipe in your SipScout report, we're going to shake this sans ice so that it actually
incorporates and kind of.
the honey actually kind of breaks down appropriately. We're doing 1.5 ounces of the
Dill.
Norden dill, and then 3 ounces of your carrot juice, and then if you have it, a little bit of pickle or
Caper brine.
preferentially caper brine.
Yeah.
Um,
You do not have that in your kit. I'm
Does
sorry. I
wonders
could not
to set
find
it
small little
yeah.
ounces of caper brine.
Individual packets of caper brine. It's $1 million idea, folks. Who's gonna do it first?
But
Maybe
if you have some,
$1,000 idea.
yeah, if you have some pickles or capers in your fridge, just go grab a little bit because it does add a little fun
Yeah,
element
that
to it.
salinity I think is nice, and that's why we indicated it there on the menu or on the recipe.
Have a caper that wants to come along for the ride.
Yeah, maybe we'll let him.
And you know, if you're feeling festive as well and you have dill in the house, you can throw a sprig of dill in for a garnish at the end. That's nice on Easter.
Oh yeah, something I want to tell. I told you two earlier, but I should tell the group. Carrot is a natural pairing for aquavit because caraway, dill, coriander, and angelica are all in the carrot family.
I had no idea.
They're really cool. Yeah, there's a lot of botanicals and herbs that are vegetables and herbs that are in the carrot family. But I actually didn't know that until we were well into the design process of the label, and actually my light's so bright, but it's gonna be hard. But all the bottles have this little botanical flourish right here, and that is that's modeled after the leaf structure of the carrot family. So caraway and dill particularly have that leaf structure, but if you look at the green on the top of a carrot, it also has this very similar little structure. So that's our little carrot nod right there.
Love it. Love it.
All right. And now after we've shaken it with the expressed intent of hopefully getting the honey to dissolve fully, we'll shake it with some ice to actually get it cold so we can drink it and enjoy it.
So it's delicious. Yeah, and like Evan was saying, often when you work with honey, you actually want to create a honey simple syrup. So you would actually boil the honey with some water and kind of thin it out a little bit, and then that way it incorporates a little easier.
Yeah, that was our bar hack. We would do just 1 part water, it's just warm water and honey 1-to-1, and you usually wouldn't even. You don't always have to even boil it at that point. You can just shake it, let it sit, and then shake it again in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Boiling is always better though.
As you all know, do not pour the ice from your shaker into the glass. You want fresh ice in your glass because otherwise you have partially diluted ice and it's going to melt all that much faster. And no one wants a watery drink. So while I know it feels like sometimes, especially if you don't have an ice maker at home, that you're wasting ice, it's really worth it.
Proper cocktail etiquette.
Yes. Yeah.
That looks beautiful. I'm jealous that I don't get one now.
I'm so sorry.
Should have ordered one of those for myself.
We should have sent you a kit.
It's all good. I'll replicate it. I'll figure it out.
I knew you didn't need us to send you the spirits.
No, I got a whole bunch of that.
And cheers.
Oh, that looks so
Bunny
good.
Mary. And it's just fun to say the Bunny Mary.
Yeah, it is. And frankly, in my opinion, also partially because I'm an Arizona native, I could use a little more spice to this. I might splash a little tapatio or something of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think really similar to the dill in there is so nice. I do think similar to a Bloody Mary, you can kind of make this your own. Like that's the base recipe, but then you can add, what just happened to us there? That was weird.
We're back.
Yeah, but you can add Tabasco to it. You can make the skewers with a hamburger on it if you want, and a half chicken, like how people go crazy with the garnishes these days.
Whole Alaskan crab claw.
Yeah, exactly. So insane.
I'm adding more caper brine right away.
Yeah, you want a little more caper brine in there?
I need a little more salty.
And so before we have everyone join us for happy hour, Robin, why don't you just tell us a little bit about the story of Norden Aquavit and how you guys got started and
Yeah.
how you became the Aquavit kind of expert that you are and how this brand came to life.
Yeah, so I fell in love with it trying it in Denmark 20 years ago. Um, Bartended for 15 years. My wife's mom's side of the family has Swedish heritage. Uh, when it came time for us to start our own business together, we really, we gravitated towards the spirits industry, but we wanted to do something unique that we felt like there was room to improve upon something and where we could actually be the leaders of a category rather than sort of copying something that was out there already.
Yeah.
So that's really what kind of led us down that path. We were collecting aquavits for a while, anything we get our hands on, learning about the history of it, not only in Scandinavia, but here in the States. There's actually an interesting history of distilling aquavit that a lot of folks don't know. Everybody thinks that it was started, the first craft brand was 2006 by Christian Krogstad in Portland, Oregon. And I have recently uncovered some evidence that aquavit was being distilled here shortly after Prohibition in states like Chicago and Pennsylvania. So I've got actually some old labels and bottles from the late 30s and early 40s, which is really cool. They're probably not that good, but they existed. People did. There were. It was. I think it was on people's radar. But yeah, so we wanted to infuse a little something extra into the category, bring it more into the modern landscape of cocktail making, but still be able to enjoy it in the traditional setting with food. So spent a lot of time developing this recipe, finding these botanicals that really lived harmoniously together, distilling it in such a way that you could taste everything together, which was really important. Nothing's in there unnecessarily. We really want to highlight that citrus element of caraway in particular with the Tafel style. So there's citrus elements, and there's a little pine undertone to caraway when it's distilled on its own. It actually on a like a terpene level, there's limonene and pinene, so lemon and pine in caraway. But the main flavor of caraway is carvone, which is the same terpene that gives spearmint its mintiness. So, yeah, just trying to really create something special and unique and introduce the category to folks. So the name is a big deal. Norden means northern or the north, or it's also a name for the region of Scandinavia in Scandinavian languages. So it's a way for us to have a Nordic word that's actually a little easier to pronounce. That was another thing we noticed with a lot of the Scandinavian brands and even some of the American-made aquavits. They were trying really hard to sound authentic by using these crazy words with like 3 umlauts, and it gets a little tricky. So we wanted to be able to pronounce the word but still have a traditional Nordic word.
Branding 101. If consumers can't pronounce your brand name, that's
they're not going to order it.
Or they're certainly not going to tell their friends about it, and they're going to be able to find it. So
a few, geeky bar people will order it, But I approached it from a bartender's perspective of like, how are we gonna get the name to stick in people's minds? And the design of the bottle was really important. We wanted to have an element of hospitality on the bottle as well. It's really traditional to offer someone a drink of aquavit when they come to your home in Scandinavia. Also, it's always served during festive celebrations. So it really is a symbol of gathering and togetherness. So that's where that illustration of the figure holding the cocktail glass so that's sort of the offering of hospitality, but also holding a cocktail glass with all those botanicals bursting out of there symbolizes this as a cocktail ingredient as well. And it was also really important for us to have aquavit in the brand name. People still just call us Norden, but I always say it's Norden Aquavit. We really want to hammer that home to really bring the category along for the ride. It's such a vast category in Scandinavia with such a rich history, and we really feel like it deserves a place in every bar.
Yeah,
every bar should have at least one aquavit. Is what I feel. Hopefully, it's
It is remarkable that it is a category. It is, a virtuous category, and the fact that speed racks across our country,
Yeah.
got vodka, gin, rum, tequila, no aquavit, and
Yeah.
it
It's
is
starting to change slowly. But even in Scandinavia, they don't think of it as a cocktail ingredient. It doesn't get the same level of appreciation. It's so ingrained in their brains that this is what you drink with food, this is what you drink during Christmas. We have rum from the islands that we bring in. We have bourbon that we bring over from America, and there are no traditional cocktail recipes really in Scandinavia that call for aquavit.
No.
It's been around for 500 years. People just drink it by itself.
Fascinating.
Let's open this up so that everybody else who's joining us can chat and
for sure.
Pose some questions to you, Robin, and
Sure.
Tell us how they're enjoying their Bloody Mary. And
Before we do that, because some people do tend to drop off when we do this, but don't leave. We have lots of fun here. So we do like to thank everyone for joining if you do have to leave. And Robin, thank you so much for telling us your story. You have succeeded in creating something unique that is kind of introducing people to this category, I would say.
Just a wonderful portfolio.
It really is fabulous. So thank you for sharing this with us.
My pleasure.
Cheers, everyone. And now for those of you here, I'm going to promote everyone to panelist. If you would like to come on camera and join us, feel free. That way you can unmute yourself, talk to us directly. If you want to stay the way you are and just keep listening without coming on camera or unmuting yourself, that is totally fine too. If you missed the prompt to get promoted to panelist and need me to do it again, just shoot a quick message. But otherwise, we're good.